Thanks everyone for joining us on time for today's career talk on the Saturday evening. And today we've got a guest. I stand corrected with the name. The name is Chandru and not Chandra Sekhar, as we told all of you on a lighter
Ch-
note.
Nirja,
Yes,
my name is Chandrasekhar, but I just
Chandru.
suggested that you can refer to me as Chandru because it's too long a name to.
Absolutely, absolutely. No. I was also saying that on a lighter note itself. But an impeccable, career graph. I'll just take, say, about 2 minutes to introduce you as a quick prelude to, our entire conversation today. Chandru or Chandrasekhar, he is an organizational development specialist, and that's exactly the current portfolio that you're having also in Infosys Finacle. You are an OD specialist. You've previously worked with companies like TVS Motors. You were the lead learning and organizational development lead. You were also the HRBP lead. You worked with Mahindra and Mahindra. And I think last week we had a guest, who'd worked, one of your colleagues only who had worked in a very similar domain. You were a part of the HRLP program in 2014 and 2015 at Soil in Gurgaon. And you're having over 12 years of work experience. That's literally a decade-long work experience that you have in IT, agriculture, automotive industry. You're a certified organizational and development and change management professional. So I think a lot of our discussion today and the students' queries around that area will be revolving around that because, it's a very misunderstood area. We don't know how students can actually make a segue into this entire arena, how they can pivot their careers, especially once when they've done their HRLP program here at Soil. And one thing which I found very beautiful was that your career purpose, as you write on your social media pages as well, is to nurture a healthy workplace culture for both people and businesses to thrive, which is essentially why all of us are also trying to be over here, understand management principles better. You have been responsible for delivering a range of OD initiatives for, of course, Infosys Finacle, as we introduced. And what really captivated our attention was the way that you're formulating the skills index, the way you're revamping the job architecture, the way you're championing diversity. I think it's all very incredible. So, welcome to today's webinar. And I will let you spearhead the conversation. Tell us, please, a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, thank you for that nice introduction. It sometimes is good to hear from someone about the career journey that you've traversed so far. It kind of acts as a reinforcement. Sometimes it sounds that so much has happened, and therefore it also acts as a reminder for for whoever comes into this forum and then listens to it. But you pretty much covered about me, Nirja. So that's about my professional journey, right? So I have a sibling yeah, a younger sister. She's in the US, settled with two kids. Um, I'm with my parents, my mom and dad. They are in Chennai, so I'm in a place called Hosur. It's a small town in Tamil Nadu. My first language is Tamil. I also do understand a bit of Telugu, English, of course, and really broken Hindi is what I can converse with in a 1 year that I was there in soil that time. Right? So pretty much it. That's what that's about me, and I would like to focus on what do people have in their minds to seek for in this conversation in the next 35 minutes, 40 minutes that we have with us, and I would like to take it like that. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even though we've got a few buckets of questions which we will ask, from the students that we've amassed, but the live audience also, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section. We will, of course, make sure that, our guest is actually trying to answer all of them. I think very beautifully and very humbly said the broken Hindi part, but you just introduced and contextualized yourself really well. One part which is often misunderstood is when you're an HR professional, people of course have enough knowledge and mentors, when you're talking about talent acquisition or even HRBP. You have been an HRBP also in your previous organization. But when we talk about OD, when we're talking about change management, unfortunately there's not a lot of guidance that people have. So let's just start, because that was also one bucket of questions that we got from our audience once when we had rolled out last week that you're going to be our guest, that how, and you're also a certified organizational development professional. So could you please help us understand and dissect that, how has your journey been like, particularly after your HRLP program? You've actually, been across three sectors, you've been across three industries, impeccably solid experience. Like most of the companies you've actually been for a really long time. Of course, TVS Motor was almost half a decade, over 5 years. So just help us understand that, if I'm a student right now, and if in case I want to, segue or make an entry, and I'm here representing, students at the PGPM HRLP program also, or the PGDM HR major students, how can they make their career in OD and change management?
Sure. A very relevant question, and I'm sure it's representative of the cohort that is there in soil right now that's seeking this question. Again, there's no one way to reach the organization and change management domain, but the way I went about is it's not that I went about, but then that's the journey that was carved out, right? So I joined as an HRBP in Mahindra soon after after my HRLP program in soil. And as an HRBP, I think you go through the value chain pretty well, even though you may be handling certain functions like sales or pre-sales or marketing or R&D, but then it gives you a peek into the business, the way organizations work, what is the contribution of different functions and groups in an organization. So that entire landscape is kind of getting etched in your head as you work as an HRBP. That is from a business front, and from an HR function front, you also get to deliver what multiple center of excellences at the corporate does. For example, the learning and development team, whatever they do, you get to also deliver it for your business. You're going to curate certain programs for your business, and therefore you work very closely with the L&D team. You work very closely sometimes with the compensation and benefits team to for salary fitment and all of that. You also work with employee engagement team in rolling out surveys. And after the surveys come, you also debrief those survey results to the business leaders and action plan the way forward so that you're better off in terms of employee satisfaction in the next year. So you work with multiple teams. Again, it depends upon the kind of structure each organization has, but that's the way you get a hang of different HR COE functions. What do they individually do, and how does it actually get delivered to people at a grassroots level through the HRBP? So the HRBP becomes a very important. Um, so if you look at um, the Josh Berson's tripod structure, right? So there is the HRBP, there is the HRCOE, and also there is the HR operations, right? So important pillar is HRBP because they front end whatever the HR has to deliver to business, and the HR operations is a day-to-day affair, and the HRCOE is at the central level where they study and research and then bring practices that are relevant for one's organization, right? That being said, while we learn organization development or organization culture, behavior, organization design in the classroom, it still remains a theory, right? So, and therefore I said HRVP acts as a good forum for you to kind of familiarize yourself with the workings of the organization and workings of the HR function in specific. And then you're able to make sense as to how do you align the people strategy with the business strategy, and then how to create org development interventions, all of that, right? So if there is a follow-up question, I think I can answer more on this.
Yes, yes,
Um,
definitely, definitely. I think you brilliantly encapsulated a very important point that HR is not functioning in silos if you don't understand the entire value chain. And this is what we keep on telling even in our career development sessions to HR students that you as HR students need to even more strengthen your awareness and knowledge about how businesses are working. It's not that oh, you've taken HR and it's an easier job. Not at all. It's rather a tougher job because that candidate fitment or your overall driving the change, that's really interesting. We'd like to dissect this also a little bit before we, head to the next question. Like you mentioned, and you've actually dealt that in person with your previous stint before Infosys Finacle. Just help us understand, last year there was a lot of discussion on center of excellence, a lot of roles also circulating around center of excellence, and a lot of times people were a little befuddled and bemused, and that plays a very critical role even when you're talking about your organizational development. So maybe as a follow-up first question, could you help us contextualize that, if there is an HR student, what kind of opportunities can they start, upskilling themselves for, say, in the next, 90 days when they get ready for their placement week? What kind of opportunities can they have from the HR perspective? Could you please shed some more light on, each part? Of course, with after a decade of experience, they know this is where they can probably aspire to be where you are currently. But in order to pave that way, how can they just get started? What kind of typical roles should they prepare for? How should they then upskill themselves and, make sure that they're giving their best foot forward?
Okay, two, three aspects here, Nirja. Thanks for that question. I'm also involved in interviewing people in colleges and then getting them on board. What I always see in today's potential prospective talent is there is immense confidence, but there is not so immense content, right? So confidence with content will definitely take you places. So therefore, my invitation to people is whichever is your domain area of interest. It could be talent management, it could be talent acquisition, or it could be OD itself, OD change management, right? So we live in a digital world, and what is more easier to leverage today is the digital learning forums that we have at the click of our hands, right? So there is LinkedIn Learning, there is Udemy, there is so many. So I think you need to familiarize yourself with the domain interest that you have, and then see if it overlaps with the offerings at the placement time from companies that come to your college, right? So familiarizing oneself through digital learning could be one way. The second way is, I think even today we have the mentorship association, right? In soil with this, yeah. So I think that is where you need to use the power of questioning your mentor, asking your mentor, and seeking which aspect, bringing, extrapolating the theoretical knowledge that you've gained to practical experiences in organizations, right? I think you can use the mentor like that, you know. Maybe it's about, let's say, a process like succession planning. You may learn succession planning on LinkedIn, but then how does it really happen in an organization that your mentor is working in, or in organizations that they have worked with, right? So that's where you will get a practical aspect of how do you see those practices coming up. And you can also use the internship time. I think that's a good time for you to kind of understand, internship is already over, I think, right? Or it's going to come.
So, in the two formats, you were a part of the PGPM program way
Yeah,
back into 2014. So, we encourage them to have live projects. That's also one question that we'll probably address and ask you. But
sure.
for the PGPM program, the 2-year program, yes, they're done with their summer internships. As we speak, they've just come back, and now they're starting their term 4.
Okay. So internships are a great way to also get oneself closer to reality of the organization so that you're able to relate what you've learned about a practice or a process, right? So those are some of the ways. I think we should really leverage the mentorship pool because they are there, and you can always ask a lot of questions to your mentor and seek their opinion as to how things work at an organization level.
Absolutely correct. I think this problem of intergenerational team, I completely resonate with you being a millennial and, the Gen Z issue altogether. There's a lot of confidence and also a lot of technological alertness. They're pretty agile when it comes to that, but probably it won't be like, the same pen and paper generation. It won't be the same generation which would probably want to strengthen their awareness. So I completely resonate, but I think very good feedback pointer. And of
One,
course, yeah.
Nirja, before you move, just one thing is popping in my mind is we live in a world of information overload, right?
Absolutely.
And therefore, there is some ping on the phone, there is some notifications popping up on your screen and all of that, which is a reality today. I'm not going to say that, go for a digital detox, because this is not the time that you can go on a digital detox. You're looking to bag a job after you complete your course, right? So my suggestion to people is, because in all of this you lose attention, you lose focus, you're not able to how do I say, you're not able to put your attention in one particular thing at a point of time, right? So multitasking is good when you do one thing at a time and you have five things in your hand, which is okay. But then you cannot kind of shift from one to another without completing that one task. So that's a little detrimental to one's mental health, right? So my suggestion is, every day, whenever you get time, morning, afternoon, in the night or evening, at least read 10 pages of anything that you like. But those 10 pages, you need to kind of isolate yourself, and you're just going to focus on those 10 pages of reading, and you're not going to be distracted by a phone call or by your friend or by anything, right? So you're just dedicating yourself the 10 pages, however long it takes for you to read those 10 pages. This will definitely address the focus and attention part in people today.
Absolutely well said. Absolutely well said. This is attention economy. Making a segue into the second bucket, of course, you really did throw some light about organizational development and the entire bit. Like you also said that you go on to a lot of these interviews. So just tell us, maybe a decade ago when you kickstarted your career, what was the job expectation back then, and what are the current job expectations that people are having from the recruiter's perspective? What are the 4 to 5 must-haves that a student should definitely make sure that they're trying to upskill themselves, especially like I said, there is a time constraint, like 90 days now to the placement week, and placement week day zero has become like overhyped, and it also often creates a lot of stress in the mind of the student. But still, like some 4 to 5 buckets that you really think will add in a lot of value, and the recruiters or the industry like yourself, they really value these core skills. So anything that you can guide and mentor them on that front?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I did that time is, I usually do is, even today when I go, if I look to change the company, then this is what I do, right? So one thing is, I can aspire for something, let's say a position and a particular package in my mind, all of that. But then it's equally, if not more important, how do I build my capability and competency so that I'm actually delivered what I wanted, right? So one thing is setting an aspiration, which is good, and today's people have that, right? But then you need to definitely develop your competency, which is the technical aspect of it. And from a soft skill point of view, I think it's always good to be presentable. Okay, when you face an interview, you have a smiling face, and definitely you're not going to come across as a person that knows everything, right? Because that may put off the interviewer sometimes. So being humble is equally important, as much as you're being competent, right? Those are some things that are very important. Okay, and um, go with a mindset that you could lose this interview also. Counterintuitive, right? Because why am I saying that? Because capability and competency is in your hands, but then many aspects are not in your hands on that day, right? And if you don't get it, you don't get it. It's okay, right? So you go with a mindset that you could lose this interview also, because that kind of addresses your stress levels that's going on inside it. Those are some things that I do, Neerja. Yeah. Those are not directives, but These are some observations that I've seen in people and on myself, and that's what I'm trying to share here. It may work, it may not work, but this is my humble submission on that.
No, that's so true. That's so true. You shouldn't be too harsh on yourself, and then just like, bring together. And as it's said in human resources, it's not that, you're rejected for a job. It's just that you didn't culturally fit for that particular job. So eventually it stands in your own interest also. We see that, when we look at your career, particularly the Hogan assessments or your certifications. So just help us a little bit, because like you said, we're living in an age where there is definitely a digital overload. And at this particular juncture, it becomes a little difficult for us to actually understand that what are some specific courses that we can do, especially, when we want to get more knowledge. We are getting a lot of theoretical academic knowledge, but we don't really know what is going to be relevant, especially in today's day and age where human resource information systems have become very important, or certain people analytics is again becoming very, very critical, especially for those OD decision making that you do. So just help the students probably understand that, what are some of the certifications that they could probably also target, especially from not just the organizational development perspective, but overall also, to just like, have their overall resume get a little weight, and not just cosmetic weight, but, it actually adds value when it comes to their own understanding or knowledge in human resources.
Yeah. See, in not just in today, but recent times, I think skills is the new currency to one's career in today's industry. Okay. And how do we assess skills? Is through the credentials that you acquire for that skill. For example, if I'm a total rewards professional or a competent professional, then I need to have certain certifications and credentials from a well-recognized place, like a Aon Hewitt. At that point of time, we had a collaboration with Aon Hewitt, and through the course, we were able to also gain credentials from them, certified rewards professional and certified benefits professional, I think. So these are some things that you definitely need to. I don't know about the curriculum right now, but if we are in touch with certain um, industry bodies that provide this certification, then those definitely come as an icing on the cake to the interviewer, because that's the first gate cleared, right? The second gate, of course, is the way you respond to the questions the interviewer is going to ask on that particular certification. So, whatever your domain of interest is, try seeking a certification. LinkedIn, Udemy will only be preliminary, but then you need to also focus on classroom learning also, because there's something called classes are also going on. That's equally important. So those kind of set up the theoretical aspect of it. From an applicative learning point of view, you may want to do something more. SHRM offers a lot of course, a certified HRBP professional itself, right? And SHRM offers multiple other courses also. So it depends on your area of interest, and therefore you choose a certification, right? So that will definitely be an add-on.
Correct, absolutely. One more thing that links back to the question that you answered before, that don't be too harsh on yourself. When we see your career graph and journey has been impeccable, but you've taken the correct decisions. You got a campus placement in Mahindra and Mahindra, but then after that you went to TVS. Post that, you're currently there with Infosys Finacle. So just help us understand that, a lot of times when you're there in that 1 year or that 2 year program, at that time you are completely obsessed about that one campus placement, but your entire career is actually not just dependent on that. It's just it's just like opening the door for you. It's a foot in the door, like it's making sure that you are able to make a good head start altogether. I know, at this particular juncture, whatever you'll probably answer, the students may think that it's easier said than done. But what was your experience? I would want you to rewind that a little bit. Were you also a little worried, scared about your placement back then in 2014, 2015? And currently, what advice would you give them so that they can mellow down the stress? Because there is, of course, a competition rising. They're close to about There'll be over 350 students competing in the placement week, and close to about over 100 students in the HR space itself. So how would you probably, quell or mitigate the sort of stress that every student would be going? What would be your piece of advice to them?
Okay. So, it's like when there is an election around, there is always a churn in the society. I mean, that's something that you cannot put it off. I think it's part and parcel of the process. And competition, burnout, stress, all of this is part and parcel of the process. So I would still stick to the same thing, right? So when you know that subject very well, you actually don't have to worry about it. The only time that you have to worry about is you don't know enough, or you're not adequately known of uh, the domain or the cohort that you belong to. So I think build your skill, because that's what is in your hands. Being competent is in my hand, right? So the other aspect is, okay, two, three things here. One is skill yourself really well, that you know the subject well. Okay, you have a well-rounded view about the subject that you are representing. Two is connect with people, right? Genuinely connect with people, and then you can leverage that network. If the placement does not work, then you have something to fall back to, right? I think those two aspects are something that I would give as takeaways. um, if you do the first thing really well, you will definitely get it. There's no two ways about it. But there are enough opportunities in the industry. Then that's when you go to the second part, where you leverage a network, or you try to do an internship. You try to take up live projects and do for your mentor maybe, right? So those are aspects where you're trying to exhibit your expertise and skill and your interest. Maybe in the start you may not have this expertise and skill, but I think curiosity and interest sometimes outweighs the skill that you have, right? And therefore, I always say, have an attitude, positive attitude of learning something. Things will come, yeah. Things will come your way, and I can be open about this. Uh, by God's grace, I was the first to get selected in my batch. I got a PPO. In 6 months of time, I joined the internship and all of that. I didn't go through what many went through, right? But then I know how my friends coped up, and how did they go about landing in a job. That's something that I learned by seeing, right? So like I mentioned, I think you need to really skill yourself. And the way I got the PPO is because of my interest only. There was a project that was allocated for me, but then I did more than what was allocated. So sometimes it's good to actually go overboard and then show your interest, because like you mentioned, there are so many people. How do I outshine so many people, right? So that drive has to be there, and definitely you will get what you have to get. And I started off at 6.25 LPA, okay, and that was not the on an even on an average, that was not a great CTC that time. But then today I'm happy with what I'm getting, right?
What we can make from your story is a very deep meaning. You're trying to say that, it's not even about the competition. It's about, completing the tasks at hand that are assigned to you. And not just that, how are you? Are you enjoying? Are you connecting to the right people? Are you getting mentored by the right people altogether? So I think that's really nice, because from this story, we can take you will definitely not worried about the competition. You were just going with the flow and doing whatever was expected, and you stretched that really, contributed. That a decade back, you didn't probably get that average amount, but right now, overall in your career,
I
I'm
did,
sure.
yeah. It wasn't a glamorous CTC then, right?
Correct.
But then I thought, okay, this is the place to go. I like the culture of the company. I like the mentors that I had. I think those are the seeds. I still am in contact with my mentor in internship time. Even now, she is in contact with me. She's the head HR of CAT. She's based in Mumbai, right? The manufacturer, the tire company, the CAT tire company, right? So I'm still in contact with it. I think it's very important after you go into the organization, um, just see a mentor will come in your journey. but then you will have to really resonate with that person. And sometimes the manager also could be a mentor. The first manager as a management trainee is very special. For me, that's what happened, right? My manager, still, I'm in contact with her. When she changes jobs, she informs me. When I change job, I inform her. So that's a rapport that I had built with her. It's always good to have a mentor from a when all of us go through our bad phases also. You're down, you have negative thoughts and all of that. You always have some people who are mentors that you connect to, and then you speak to them. So there is resonance, there is a sounding board, your blind spots are revealed, all of that. So that makes the journey really good. I really don't have a magic formula straight to land into a job, right? But then these are some what do I say? These are some insights that I got along the way, right? For example, when I moved out of Mahindra into TVS, I wasn't very great in negotiating salaries. I think that was there back then also when I had joined. I think I could have negotiated with Mahindra on my salary because I had about 3 years experience when I was studying in soil. Because Wipro, I had 3 years experience. Wipro was my first company. That's a learning, and therefore, when I moved from TVS to Infosys Finacle, I I think I was adequately equipped to negotiate for the salary that I really wanted and that I really deserved, and that came my way also. So some things you don't get it right in the first instance, but then you kind of learn and then rewire yourself and bounce back. Yeah.
Absolutely true, and that's very interesting. Also, there are of course these questions that how's your work role completely drastically changed from your first job to your second job, and then of course right now currently, how does a typical day look like? Because there are a lot of speculations, especially when we talk about a human resource professional, and this then gets linked to another question that we have is that I'm sure often you're asked because you really love these kind of platforms where you're sharing your knowledge with the students, and you practitioner are trying to make sure that students are able to bridge that gap of the theory and the practical world insights. So in your opinion, what do you also see as the future trends in the human resources? And by future I mean, like, maybe in the next 1 year or two, not even like say 5 years from now, but in the next 1 or 2 years, what are the typical trends? What are the roles that students should really look out for? What are the go-to careers which are not going to be obsolete and will leverage AI, Gen AI, in the most productive way altogether? Like, we see a lot of the LXP coming in, we see a lot of center of excellence becoming like major access. So what is your opinion? So two questions, like a typical day and the future, the immediate future, and the roles that students could target in human resources.
Okay. Uh, These days, there's no typical day because every day it's almost something different comes up, and sometimes firefighting happens. All of that. I'd be interested in answering the second part of the question, which is HR trends, right? So a typical day, even if I say you would not know it, only you'll hear it, but then you won't have an experience of it. You come and experience it in the industry because different industry, different companies, very different, right? Typical day. For example, in TVS, because we didn't have a great we didn't have a great data stack, right? So even to get one single piece of data, for example, let's say a candidate experience score after having joined 3 months in the organization, you need to pick up somewhere. It's not something that's readily available. But in Infosys, the data stack is really good. Therefore, you focus on some value adding activities and all of that. But then eventually we also did that in TVS, and the quality of work life became better. So it's very different from one company to another. Typically in OD and change management, I can tell you a typical profile of OD and change management is um, you connect with a lot of external partners because you don't have all the capabilities like tech in the organization, and therefore you partner with people outside like LXPs and career talent marketplaces, all of that. So a lot of connection with the external world. You definitely have frequent interactions with the leadership and leadership minus one because you want to get certain perspectives on the OD initiatives that you want to drive for the organization, and therefore from from a reality point of view, from a contextualizing point of view. You have some interactions with the leadership and leadership minus one. And being at the central team, which is the OD, you definitely need to build a very good rapport with the HRBPs, right? You need to co-work, collaborate with them, and ensure that whatever model, a reward model may be, or a learning framework may be, how does it actually translate into real value for an employee? And therefore, your collaboration with HRBP becomes that much more essential, right? So those are some aspects about OD and CM. And you mentioned I'm a certified OD and CM. I don't know. I really question that. I may have a certification because that's something that I pursued, but there is always uh, many areas of I don't knows that keep cropping up in my work areas, which I have to quickly go and familiarize myself or ask somebody in another company, and then see how do you curate and contextualize it for your environment. So certain qualities of an OD and CM professional, what I think are very important, are um, be very, very curious to know what is not going to work well than what is going to work well in the intervention or project that you're doing, right? So basically, I'm saying try to become aware of the blind spots. Because I created the framework and I created the model, it needn't be the perfect model. And therefore, socializing with leaders and HRBPs and others becomes very important because that's only going to strengthen your framework or model that you've designed as an intervention. That's one. Two, I think connecting the dots is very important as an OD professional. You may have heard something in the all hands meet. You may have heard something at a coffee table. You may have heard something in a meeting. How are you going to connect and synthesize this information? This is very important. A leader may have told something in one small meeting, but then your ability to intuitively connect to a project that you're driving, right? That's very important. So connecting the dots is very important. Three, how are we able to effortlessly zoom in and zoom out? Sometimes you need to zoom out and look at the big picture of the initiative that you're trying to drive and therefore make decisions. Sometimes you need to also zoom in to see that there is operational excellence in the initiatives that you're trying to drive on the ground, execution excellence, right? So zooming in, zooming out, I think that capability is also very, very important. Um, Quantitative qualitative analysis is very important. I don't have to say that comes with a role because not all data that a audience CM professional has are numerical data, but there is also voice, there is also feelings and emotions, and therefore qualitative analysis equally is very important. There are courses on LinkedIn and Udemy. You can always go through that. How do you synthesize insights out of employees' voice, right? So those are also very important. So that's about the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, yes, you already mentioned Neerja, MI, AL. All this is actually disrupting the way the workplaces were. So every day, every other organization is buying an LXP or a talent marketplace, which is powered by AI, which purportedly reduces the interaction between HR and employee, because otherwise it's the HR that would have that information and the employees would interact, or the employee would reach out to the HR for that information. But then now it's more of machine interface than human interface. But one thing is very clear. Um, Roles like organization psychology or IO, industrial and organization psychology, those are roles that's here to stay, right? There's definitely human interaction needed, and therefore the HRBP role is important. Maybe it will become a different, it may have a different flavor tomorrow. Maybe the content of the role may change tomorrow, but then that interaction is important. What I also see typically in HR professionals is they're grounding on subjects like psychology, sociology, psychometrics, which is a fallout of psychology, um, counseling, employee counseling, coaching. These are skills that are an opportunity for an HR professional to build, so so that you have that grounding of human psychology, right? Because you're dealing with humans. Um, if there is an automotive engineer in the lab, and if he or she specializes in, say, the engine systems, they do a PhD, or they at least do a relevant aspect around that domain and then do that lab work, right? Now we deal with humans. What is the credential we have, right? We need to definitely have those credentials also in the first place, which is very important. Only then you'll be able to make sense of, and therefore the subject of OB, right? Organization behavior. These are very important, right? Because most of people who do MBA are not BSc psychologists. We mostly engineers or any other streams, they do it, and therefore we don't have a great exposure to psychology. But then we had a very small exposure of psychology, sociology in soil back then. But then it's important you also gain credentials around it. Maybe you may want to have a certification on transactional analysis, which is Eric Burns' full work, right? Maybe you want to delve and study about Carl Jung's work on shadows, right? That is another set of work that is there. Hogan is a great, you mentioned about Hogan. Hogan is a great tool. Today, organizations use Hogan at a leadership level. The assessments that the leadership require, Hogan is there in most organizations, but it's very expensive. But it's only used to a certain set of people. But then you can also go for other psychometric assessment certifications like NBTI, FIRO-B, depending upon the organization that you go to, because different organizations uses different tools. But don't miss an opportunity to go through them, right? So then that becomes a good credential for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's so true that, HR is an intersection, and a lot of psychologists also that you mentioned, you should have a firm grounding in that. As we are almost moving towards the conclusion, but I think everybody, and I've got two DMs already for this question, like, how do you maintain your humility? And I think I was also a little curious about that because, a lot of times when people have such impeccable track record, but the way that you have it, and how do you define the muser that you always, like, introduce yourself on the digital platforms? And on that note, I would even urge people to actually, go over all your posts, because every post of yours is actually, I think, an excerpt of a chapter in human resources, in a particular way, especially when you're sharing information about your sessions that you're delivering. So that was, of course, a recommendation for our audience. But help us understand that, when you say a muser, and how does that really helps you even in your role, because, there will be a lot of the part whether you're implementing the ODA and change management decisions, or while you're doing multiple roles. As you said, no two days are typical over here in your current capacity. So just help us understand that, what do you mean by the word muser, particularly, when we're looking at you and your profile overall? And I see a big smile there, but please help us, contextualize that a little.
So I used to write posts with a hashtag of self-musings initially. And then, what's this actor's name? He passed away, right? Sushant. So he had an Instagram profile called self-musing. So I didn't want the same hashtag, so I changed to hashtag self-musing underscore revolution. But then the musing stuck to the, it's been there ever even I was in college. I used to in soil also I used to write, right? So certain insights come to you. You attract certain insights. So musing is thinking. Muser is someone who thinks deep, and then then you share it with the world, whatever you think. So these days I'm writing a post series. 3 posts I've posted, which is on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right now, if you see Finacle, right, like you mentioned, I handle 3 broad work in OD. Right, there is career systems, there is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then there is culture. Now, these 3 aspects are almost 60-70% of core OD work. Okay. Under these 3 broad themes, there are multiple projects that I deliver. And these projects impact at people level, process level, policy level. That's in a nutshell. Right. So diversity, equity, inclusion is not something that I did in the past. It's the first time I'm doing it in this organization, and therefore a lot of curiosity, therefore a lot of reading up, going through courses, listening to podcasts on YouTube and elsewhere. Right? When you listen to all of this, you you also kind of churn your own with that information. You also churn your own insights, and therefore that comes as sometimes a post on LinkedIn. But I'm not a typical social influencer kind of a thing, where because you have us, they say that you need to post at least once in a week or once in 2 weeks something. I'm not that. I'm a very very irregular muser writer. Whenever something hits me hard, whenever I read something, whenever I listen to something, where I'm in a workshop, or it could also be a conversation with about three people at an organization in a meeting on a particular subject, that may kind of I may have sprung with an insight, and that I would like to share it with the social media. So that's a little bit of background to that, Nirja.
Well, I must, say that as an observer right now, you've actually been consistent, especially the last six posts. Over six posts have been like, every week. So you've actually followed that particular norm as well. And I think we would love to
Coincidentally,
give feedback.
maybe.
Yeah, coincidentally could be. We'd like to give that feedback. Please keep on churning this information that, the compendium of knowledge that you're amassing, because we'd love to have the churned out content, because it's always a delight. I came across, of course, your LinkedIn profile this week, and I was really besotted by it, if I can't use another word, because, very clear, crisp way you've actually dissected a lot of things. So I think, please, you are on your way to becoming a thought leader. Please continue doing that. I think it was incredible. Now that we're moving towards the very end, some parting words, like I said at the beginning also, we will be having over close to about 300 people from both the programs, the PGDM and the PGPM program. They will be sitting for their placement day zero. That'll be somewhere close to about now less than 90 days actually. It'll be third week of October this year. So please help us understand that, what are your last minute advice, and not just to the HR students, even though I see in the attendees list, a lot of them are, HR students only, but still not just to the HR student, but, as a practitioner of the industry, what are the last few things that you'd probably like to say before we conclude today's session?
I would sum it up with whatever I spoke, is that just before that, Neja, what's the strength of the HRLP cohort?
So this year in the PGPM program, we are having close to about 80 students who are there, and roughly half of them are a part of the HRLP program. This year, we had a compact one, and for the PGTM program, we have 299 students, out of which we have close to about over 80 students who've taken HR.
Okay. Okay.
So that's
All
like
right.
fair over 100 complete HR hardcore major HR students who are going to be sitting for human resources roles. Rest, of course, we have marketing, analytics, finance as a major, analytics and operations basically, because I heard you also talked about the PERT model, etc. So yeah, so that's how the division is by and large.
Okay. Sure. Um, So a super summary of what I spoke would be is please know your domain well, build your content, and confidence follows. Because if you know your content, confidence follows. Second is connect and bond with people of mutual interest of whatever domain that you take. I think that's very important. Follow influencers, listen to their podcasts, follow their writings, and dedicate some time to read every day, 10 pages every day. I think that's very important. And third is there's always a part of it which you cannot control, and that's about it. So take it light on that. That's all that I have to say.
Great. Thank you so much. It was genuinely a pleasure and delight, hearing you. And we would love to, whenever you're visiting NCR, please do let us know. We'd love to invite you on campus, both the campuses rather, because we love to host you, physically as well, because I'm sure, that session and as a workshop will also pan out really well. Up until then,
Absolutely.
thanks a ton. Thanks a ton for this. And thank you so much, Arvind, for putting this together. Thanks everyone for joining and making sure that, you take insights, especially when we are looking at overall the way that how you have beautifully pivoted your career, and you told the students also about the same. So thanks everyone.
Thank you. I hope it was meaningful for all of us to connect for this an hour almost. And thanks, Arvind, for reaching out and for making that flyer very nice. I think the aesthetic of the flyer was very good. And Nirja, thanks for studying. I mean, you literally have studied my background and my posts and my activity on the digital front. So thank you so much for being, a great host this evening. I really enjoyed this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.